Standard Oil took 29 years to break. AT&T took 30. Microsoft is still running. We are at stage 4 of 6, and every monopoly that hit stage 4 hit stage 5 within 5 years. Here's what the pattern says happens next. Picture a conference room in San Jose, 2019. Jensen Huang is not presenting a chip. He is presenting a platform, a language, a set of rails that every AI system on Earth will eventually need to run on. No one in the room calls it a monopoly. They call it a standard. They call it progress. That is how every one of these deals starts. Not with a hostile takeover, not with a government contract. With a better product that quietly becomes the only product. By the time the contracts are signed, the switching costs are written in, and the gross margins hit 74%. The question is not whether NVIDIA is the next Standard Oil. I said the question is whether anyone in Washington reads the term sheet before stage 5 closes. This is stage 1, capture. And let me be completely clear, it already happened. Here is why this matters to you. Every AI product in your life right now, the chatbot, the fraud detection on your credit card, the recommendation algorithm deciding what you watch tonight, runs on a compute tool. One company sets that tool. That company is NVIDIA. And unlike most monopolies, this one was built not through price fixing or exclusion. It was built through a better product that became so embedded, so deeply written into the infrastructure of modern AI, that leaving it became economically irrational. The boardroom term for what NVIDIA has built is the empty core paradox. The system cannot function without them. Yet they produce nothing the system directly consumes. They do not generate the intelligence. They do not own the data. They own the bottleneck. And in the history of American industry, the entity that owns the bottleneck is the entity that sets the price for everything that flows through it. Here's how it works. John D. Rockefeller did not own the oil fields. He owned the pipelines and refineries. By 1879, he controlled 90% of U.S. refining capacity without touching a single well. NVIDIA does not manufacture chips. TSMC does. But NVIDIA owns the language every AI system must speak. That language is called CUDA, their proprietary compute platform, what we can call their switching rails. CUDA launched in 2006. At the time, it was a developer tool, a shortcut, a way to write faster code on graphics processors. Within a decade, it became the default language of machine learning. TensorFlow, PyTorch, every major AI framework, all of them were optimized for CUDA first, everything else a distant second. By 2020, NVIDIA held over 80% of the AI training market. Not because they locked anyone out, because they built the rails and everyone else built their infrastructure on top. 4 million developers have written code in NVIDIA's proprietary language. Some have been writing it for 20 years. That code does not run on AMD's architecture without significant rewriting. That code does not run on Google's custom chips without months of engineering work. The switching cost is not a price difference. The switching cost is a decade of rewritten infrastructure, hundreds of millions of dollars, and a performance regression your competitors will immediately exploit. Here's the concrete number. NVIDIA's gross margin is 74%. Apple's is 46%. That 28-point gap is the monopoly premium. Every dollar spent on AI infrastructure carries that premium. Embedded, invisible, non-negotiable. You pay it in your ChatGPT subscription. You pay it when your bank's AI processes your loan application. The compute toll is already priced into everything AI touches. Now here is the second-order effect. The hyperscalers, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, are simultaneously NVIDIA's biggest customers and its most motivated enemies. Each one has launched custom silicon programs to escape the toll. Google has TPUs, Amazon has Trainium, Microsoft has Maya. But escape takes 3 to 5 years of build time, and the AI arms race will not wait 3 to 5 years, so they keep paying. And they keep building the escape hatch. You might be thinking, competition is coming. AMD has competitive GPUs now. AMD's ROCm platform is improving every quarter. Here is the problem with that assumption. The moat is not hardware performance. The moat is 20 years of CUDA code that will not run on AMD's architecture without significant work. AMD's tools are improving, but in the time it takes AMD to close that gap, NVIDIA will ship the next generation of hardware. The bottleneck renews itself. That is stage 1. That is how you capture a bottleneck without anyone noticing. And that is just stage 1 of 6. Stage 2 is where you make sure nobody can leave. This is stage 2, lock-in. And this is the stage that separates a temporary market leader from a structural monopoly. Here is why this matters to you. The trillion-dollar companies competing to sell you AI products. Microsoft with Copilot, Google with Gemini, Amazon with Alexa AI, Meta with its recommendation systems. They are all paying the same landlord, and not one of them can credibly threaten to leave. That is not a free market. That is what we call a covenant lock-in, a binding dependency so deep that exit becomes economically irrational, even for entities with unlimited resources. The historical mirror here is AT&T's Bell system. Bell did not need explicit price-fixing agreements to maintain monopoly. It controlled the physical telephone lines and set interconnection terms that made competitor networks structurally unviable. You could build your own phone company, you just could not connect it to anyone who mattered. CUDA works identically. I'd share no contract required when the infrastructure dependency is deep enough. Here's how it works. The lock-in operates on 3 levels simultaneously. First, hardware dependency. The H100 and H200 GPUs are physically the only option for training frontier AI models at current scale. AMD's hardware can run inference, serving existing models, but training new frontier models at the scale of GPT-4 or Gemini requires NVIDIA's architecture. Second, software dependency. CUDA's integration with PyTorch is so deep that even OpenAI frameworks carry NVIDIA assumptions in their core libraries. Third, talent dependency. The engineers who know how to optimize AI systems were trained on CUDA. Hiring a CUDA-fluent team is cheaper than retraining your entire engineering org. Each layer reinforces the next. Now translate that to scale. As Microsoft has reportedly committed tens of billions of dollars to AI infrastructure build-out, a significant portion of it CUDA-dependent. Google, despite having TPUs for years, still buys NVIDIA hardware for workloads TPUs cannot handle efficiently. Amazon's custom Trainium chips are in early deployment, not at production scale for the hardest training tasks. When the 3 most resource-rich technology companies in history cannot credibly threaten to leave your platform, the pricing conversation changes entirely. So what does this actually mean? It means NVIDIA does not need a signed agreement to set the terms. The covenant is written in infrastructure. Every data center built around CUDA-optimized clusters is a 10-year commitment with no exit clause. Every model trained on H100 hardware is a roadmap dependency on H200 and B100 hardware for future fine-tuning runs. The switching cost compounds with every quarter. You might be thinking, open source AI is exploding right now. Models like Llama and Mistral are free to download. Doesn't that break the CUDA dependency? Here's the problem with that assumption. Open source models are still trained on NVIDIA hardware. The model weights are open. The compute infrastructure running those weights is not. Downloading a free model does not mean free compute. You still pay the toll every time it runs. The model is the car. CUDA is the road. The road is not free. And here is the urgency marker. The lock-in is not static. It deepens every quarter. Every new CUDA feature release adds another layer of dependencies. Every new NVIDIA certification program trains more developers on the proprietary stack. The exit cost grows faster than any competitor's ability to close the gap. That is the design of Stage 2. The door does not lock once. It locks a little tighter every 90 days. That is Stage 2, the covenant nobody signed. Stage 3 is where the toll booth starts printing money. This is Stage 3, extraction. And this is the stage that should concern anyone watching technology markets right now. Here is why this matters to you. In 2023, H100 chips were reportedly selling on secondary markets for $40,000 apiece. The list price, the real price, what you pay to not fall behind your competitor, is whatever NVIDIA's supply allocation team decides it is. That is not a market price. That is a toll. And the lever NVIDIA controls is not the chip's manufacturing cost. It is the allocation of TSMC's production capacity. Whoever NVIDIA decides gets chips first wins the AI race. Everyone else waits. Here is how it works. Picture the queue. Microsoft is in it. Google is in it. Every AI startup on Earth is in it. OpenAI is in it. NVIDIA decides who moves to the front, not the market. NVIDIA. The official price is the list price, the functional price, the one that determines whether your company launches its product this quarter or next year, is determined by your relationship with NVIDIA's sales team and your willingness to commit to forward purchase agreements. That is pricing power at its most complete. The numbers here are not abstract. NVIDIA's data center revenue, almost entirely GPU sales, went from approximately $3.8 billion in fiscal year 2022 to approximately $47.5 billion in fiscal year 2024. That is a 12 times increase in 2 years. Gross margins expanded to 74% during that period. For context, oil companies at peak pricing power during the 1970s energy crisis ran gross margins of 30 to 40%. Standard Oil, at the height of its refinery monopoly, ran margins in that same range. NVIDIA's compute toll is not just a monopoly. It may be the most profitable industrial bottleneck in American business history. Now let me be completely clear about what those margins mean in your life. That 74% margin flows upstream through every layer of the AI economy. Every startup calculating its unit economics starts with cost of compute, and that cost is set by NVIDIA's pricing desk. Startups pass it to customers, enterprises pass it to consumers. The margin embedded in H100 pricing becomes the invisible tax on every AI product you use. You never see it on an invoice, but it is there. In your subscription price, in the cost of the AI feature your bank charges you for, in the operating expense of every technology company building on AI infrastructure. Now here's the second order effect that changes the geopolitical math. NVIDIA's export controls restricting H100 and H200 sales to China are framed as national security policy. And they have genuine strategic logic, but they also function as a competitive weapon. Chinese AI labs, Baidu, ByteDance, Alibaba, Huawei cannot train at the same scale as American counterparts. This is not a market outcome. It is a government-enforced competitive advantage. The U.S. Commerce Department has accidentally become a participant in NVIDIA's pricing structure. Now we have to address the elephant in the room. NVIDIA is 100% dependent on TSMC for chip fabrication. TSMC operates in Taiwan. Taiwan sits in one of the most geopolitically pressured zones on Earth. If TSMC production is disrupted, for any reason, NVIDIA's supply allocation lever disappears overnight. The entire AI infrastructure build-out grinds to a halt. There is no backup fabricator at comparable technology nodes and volume, no plan B. This is the single point of failure that no one in the AI boom adequately prices into their models. You might be thinking, the market already knows this. NVIDIA's valuation prices in the monopoly. Sophisticated investors have priced the risk. Here is the problem. Markets priced Standard Oil's monopoly, too, right up until the 1911 antitrust ruling. Microsoft traded at 70 times earnings in 2000, months before the Department of Justice consent decree. The market pricing in monopoly status does not mean the restructuring event is priced in. It never is. The restructuring always comes as a surprise, even when the pattern was visible for years. That is stage 3, the lever. Stage 4 is where every monopoly in this cycle made the same fatal mistake. This is stage 4, overreach. We are here right now. And this is the stage every monopoly in the cycle ran before the government arrived. Here is why this matters to you. NVIDIA is no longer a chip company. It is building the entire AI infrastructure stack. Chips, networking, software, government contracts. And when a monopolist expands into every adjacent market, using the leverage of its core position, two things happen with mathematical regularity. Customers get louder, regulators get closer. The historical average time from stage 4 to stage 5, the restructuring event, across Standard Oil, AT&T, and Microsoft combined, is under 5 years. We are at stage 4 of 6. The historical mirror here is precise. Microsoft's fatal error was not the Windows monopoly itself. It was bundling Internet Explorer and moving to destroy Netscape using monopoly position in one market to eliminate competition in an adjacent market. That overreach triggered the 1998 Department of Justice antitrust case. NVIDIA is running the identical play, using GPU monopoly to vertically expand into networking via the Mellanox acquisition, software via NVIDIA AI Enterprise subscriptions, and sovereign AI contracts with foreign governments. Each move is individually rational. Collectively, they build the antitrust case. Here is how it works. The boardroom logic is clean. You have monopoly pricing power and compute, so you integrate vertically into every layer above and below. Buy Mellanox. Now you own the networking infrastructure that connects your GPUs inside data centers. Build NVIDIA AI Enterprise. Now you earn recurring software revenue on top of hardware revenue. Pitch sovereign AI packages to foreign governments. Now you have political protection and a revenue stream that survives any domestic antitrust remedy. Each acquisition and product line extension adds a brick to the wall, and each one adds a cause of action to a future regulatory brief. The timeline is faster than anyone wants to admit. France's competition authority conducted a formal raid of NVIDIA's offices in 2024. The European Union opened a formal investigation. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission and Department of Justice have both signaled interest. The complaint is not merely market share, it is the vertical integration strategy itself. When the company that makes the only viable AI training GPU also owns the networking infrastructure those GPUs run on, also sells the software those networks require, and also advises foreign governments on AI policy. The structural case for intervention does not require novel legal theory. It writes itself. So what does this actually mean for you? Stage 4 means the compute toll is evolving into a platform tax, hardware pricing, software subscriptions, cloud compute partnerships, AI enterprise licensing. Each new revenue line is a recurring charge built on the same CUDA monopoly that captured the market in Stage 1. Platform taxes are significantly harder to escape than hardware dependencies. You can wait for next-generation hardware alternatives. You cannot easily unwind an organization built around recurring software and service contracts. And here is where it gets worse. Every regulatory complaint, every antitrust investigation, every formal raid is a de facto subsidy to AMD, Intel, FAR, and every chip startup that could not compete on engineering merit alone. Regulatory pressure does what competitive pressure could not. It forces buyers to evaluate alternatives with genuine urgency. AMD's ROCM open platform adoption is accelerating, partly because enterprise procurement teams now have regulatory and governance cover to justify the switching cost internally. You might be thinking, NVIDIA earned this. They invested in AI when no one else believed in it. They deserve the returns. Here's the problem with that argument. Standard Oil earned its position too. Rockefeller built the most efficient refinery network in American history. AT&T built the telephone infrastructure that connected a continent. Microsoft built the operating system that put computers on every desk. And now the antitrust question was never, did they earn it? The question was always whether the structural position harmed competition and consumers. In every prior case, the answer was yes. NVIDIA's structural position is more vertically complete than any of its three predecessors. That is Stage 4. In every prior cycle, Stage 5 followed. And Stage 5 is not the end of NVIDIA. It is the beginning of something more interesting. This is Stage 5, reckoning. And here is what everyone is missing about what comes next. Here is why this matters to you. The restructuring event is not the story. The story is what the monopoly cycle does after the government arrives. When Standard Oil broke into 34 successor companies in 1911, John D. Rockefeller owned shares in all 34. Within a decade, his personal wealth had more than tripled. The breakup did not destroy the monopoly's value. It unlocked it. When AT&T was forced to divest its regional Bell operating companies in 1984, the combined market capitalization of the successor companies eventually exceeded the original. When Microsoft accepted a consent decree in 2001, it pivoted to Azure Cloud Services and became more valuable than it had ever been as a software monopoly. The pattern is consistent across every instance. The restructuring event does not terminate the monopoly. It transforms it. Here's how it works. The most likely regulatory outcome for NVIDIA is not a forced structural breakup. The precedent from Microsoft suggests behavioral remedies, conduct restrictions requiring CUDA to be licensed on non-discriminatory terms, interoperability mandates for NVLink and NVSwitch interconnect protocols, and restrictions on using supply allocation as a mechanism to disadvantage competing hardware. Those remedies would be expensive for NVIDIA's gross margins. They would also be potentially transformative for competition in AI compute. A CUDA standard that any hardware vendor can license is a very different market than CUDA, as NVIDIA's exclusive property. But here is the mechanism that protects NVIDIA, even through stage 5. The necessary evil phase. This is where the market, the regulators, and even NVIDIA's critics come to a shared conclusion. The alternative is worse. AI infrastructure built on fragmented, incompatible standards would slow the entire industry's development. The coordination benefits of a dominant platform are real. This is why antitrust remedies in mature technology markets consistently favor behavioral remedies over structural breakup. The system has become too embedded to cleanly unwind without collateral damage. The monopoly persists, constrained, not eliminated. Bottom line on what this means for you. Stage 5 produces one of two outcomes. Either compute costs fall as behavioral remedies increase competitive pressure, and the toll structure is forced open, meaning cheaper AI products downstream. Or NVIDIA survives the restructuring largely intact, pivots to the next layer of AI infrastructure, and the toll moves with it. The one outcome that historical precedent rules out, NVIDIA disappears. The monopoly cycle does not end companies, it transforms them and resets the clock. And here's the second-order effect that closes the loop on the entire cycle. The most important consequence of stage 5 is stage 1 of the next iteration. Whoever builds the dominant platform for physical AI, robotics, autonomous vehicles, industrial machine intelligence, begins the capture phase right now. NVIDIA recognizes this. Its Omniverse platform for simulating physical environments, its robotics development tools, its automotive partnerships. These are not product extensions. They are stage 1 positioning for the next monopoly cycle. The controlling shareholder does not retire after restructuring. He identifies the next bottleneck before the regulators finish writing the current consent decree. You might be thinking, open source will break this before regulators do. Open source models are already as capable as many proprietary ones. The AI is democratizing. Here's the problem. Open source broke Internet Explorer's browser monopoly, and Chrome now holds greater browser market share than Internet Explorer ever achieved. Open source models run on closed compute infrastructure. The rails are always proprietary, even when the trains are free. The history of technology monopoly cycles shows that open source redistributes value at the application layer. It has never eliminated the infrastructure bottleneck. It relocates it. The next bottleneck may already be under construction. Those are the 5 stages. Standard Oil completed the cycle in 29 years. AT&T in 30. Microsoft is still in it. Still, NVIDIA hit stage 4 with a speed none of its predecessors matched, driven by the fastest technology adoption curve in commercial history. The question is not whether stage 5 comes. The question is whether you understand stage 6 before the market does. Same conference room, same presentation, different numbers on the slide. In 2019, Jensen Huang presented a platform. In 2029, a consent decree may require him to license it. The object in the room is the same: a chip, a standard, a set of rails. The terms are what change. Standard Oil, AT&T, Microsoft, NVIDIA, 4 names, 1 pattern, 6 stages. Every time the restructuring came after everyone agreed it was too big to touch. Every time the pieces were worth more than the whole, and every time a new stage 1 was already underway before the ink on the decree was dry. We are at stage 4 of 6. The clock is running. The question is not whether you understand the pattern. The question is whether you understand it before stage 5 closes.